It was absolutely my pleasure to be invited to speak today. It's one of my passions is consumer behaviour. I currently work for 49 councils around New Zealand doing waste education. I'm certainly not the most perfect person when it comes to waste, and that's something that I like people to understand that becoming waste-free is not actually something that we need to do everything right now. We just need to all start doing something and make some big changes. But what's happened over time is I've changed the way that I live. I was the perfect consumer like 15 years ago, and we used to, because I'm obviously Tauranga, we pay for our bins on top of our rates. It's about $500 a year on top of our $3,500 rates, which is neat. But because you're paying so much money to get rid of your waste, I became one of those people who looked at it and went, right, so I've got this bin, and to feel like I will get value for money, I need to make sure I put out a full bin every week. Because if it's empty, I'm not getting value. And then I was also the person who brought a stool so that you could climb into the bin to jump up and down on it to fit more in it, so that you were getting true value for money. And over the past 14 years, I've started educating people, and I like people to know that I'm absolutely not perfect, because I do drive a V8. I'm a petrol head. I go to the Speedway, and it's never going to change. I got offered a hybrid recently, and I was like, that's great, I'll use it for a month. And then I gave it back. But, you know, it's interesting with the way that consumers have come around in the past sort of 15 to 20 years has been quite a fascinating journey. I started reflecting on when I was younger. And when I was much younger, my parents, they were pretty sort of waste-free. Like, it was just, they had the odd disposable product, disposable nappies came in, and it was something that, it was just a convenience product. The generation before, however, had nothing. Like, they would have curtains that became cushion covers, that then became a bag, that then became rags, that then, like, they were used in every sense before it was ever disposed of. But then we moved to our parents' generation, introduction of disposable products, and then our generation, or my generation, popped up and embraced everything that has to do with convenience. And over the years, we've actually grown into extremely wasteful people, and a lot of it, like, we're sitting around waiting for somebody to come along. Like, we're seeing all these problems, it's great. Social media comes up on your feed, oh, the poor whale's full of plastic, 1,000 pieces of plastic, oh, that's so sad. But once we've seen that and we're like, oh, sad moment, and then we scroll down Instagram to the next post where it has a picture of a funny cat video, and we're like, oh, look at that, it just made my day. Share that. We don't share the whale, because that's depressing. And what's happened is we've become quite an interesting species. We now work longer and harder than we ever have before to be able to afford to have this convenient lifestyle that will save us time. Because that's what we need. We need more time. But we want a new TV, even though the old one is still fine. But what's happened is this, for me, as far as looking at consumers, and I run about 220 workshops a year, and so I look really deeply into consumers. I actually spend the first half of my workshop depressing them quite severely about the situation, so they feel really bad. Then we give them a cup of tea, and then they start feeling better, and then we give them solutions. It's a great way, take them down and then start building them up again. But what's happened over the years is the way that a consumer thinks has changed. Like, we used to think, how do I grow stuff on my property? How do I deal with my own waste? We didn't want to go to the tip every week. We would go once every 6 months. And back in the day, it was a fun trip, wasn't it? It was like it was special. Like, I remember going with Dad, and he would unload the car and then leave us there. While he went up the hill of waste and came back with a bike and, some tire. He went with a spanner and a screwdriver to the tip, especially, so he could dismantle stuff to take it home. And we'd go home, Mum was stoked. We had projects for 6 months. Dad was busy. But nowadays, we have changed into this way that we put our bin out every Friday, it disappears like magic, out of sight, out of mind, it's not our problem anymore. And we keep buying like there's no tomorrow. And we've created this way of thinking, and it's not just our fault. Like, some of it has been pushed in on us, but essentially we've created some different habits. And for me, when you look at habits, it comes in many different forms. Often it's the habitual shop every week. And we don't grow a lot of our own stuff now. We're completely reliant on supermarkets to provide food for us. If we ever couldn't get into a supermarket, because for some reason they all stopped, we'd starve to death at the present time. Because we've taken out all the fruit trees, because we didn't want fruit trees on the property or on the verge, because once we started buying fruit from the supermarket and all the apples dropped on the ground, we were like, oh, that's just a pain having to pick up the rotting apples. So we pulled the tree out because it's just awkward having that. And so I just want you to just have a think. As a consumer, this habitual process happens on many different scales, but I just want to look at buying broccoli, because this is a great example of how we go into the supermarket every week, we buy broccoli, and often a lettuce as well, because you feel like you need broccoli and lettuce. You take it home, you place it in the bottom of the fridge, and it lives there. And the problem is, we're actually, as consumers, we're sick of broccoli and lettuce because we haven't eaten seasonal for a long time, So we buy winter and summer vegetables in the same season, put them in the fridge and go out for dinner because we don't feel like any of it. And then a week later, before you go to the supermarket, you pick out the poor dead broccoli from 2 weeks ago that's real limp and frail now, and you look at it and you go, oh, I should have eaten that, throw it in the bin, and then go and buy a new one. Or the purchase of apples is the same. We go into the supermarket every week, buy apples, take them home to place them in the fruit bowl. And they live there. We're sick of apples. We don't even feel like apples. Then we go to the supermarket, we buy 2 bananas to place them on top of the apples. So it feels like you've got an array of fruit. You don't eat the bananas, but we freeze them. But that's okay, because you could make a banana cake one day. But at the moment, you've got 10 kilos of bananas living in the bottom of your freezer and no banana cakes. And then the other thing we do is we buy 2 oranges to add to the fruit bowl. You don't get a kilo, just 2, because we don't even feel like oranges because the imported ones are yuck. But they just live in the fruit bowl until they dry up into those nasty, hard little oranges living in the black juice from the bananas at the bottom of the fruit bowl. And then we clean the fruit bowl out and buy some more fruit. And this has become a habit. And within the habits has also become a shift in the social norms. Now, I've been working with Countdown recently, and I've learnt some interesting things. And one thing I want to share with you is the leading product that they sell in Countdown at the present time is bottled water. Now, what is the incentive for a company to stop selling bottled water if it's the thing they sell the most of? There's no incentive. Why do they sell so much of it, though? The consumer buys it. It was only about 15 years ago when nobody could get a bottle of water unless you filled it out of the tap. And it's fascinating how when the first bottled water sort of thing came out, everybody looked at it and went, that's insane. Who would pay to buy water when you can get water out of the tap? But then fast forward and all of a sudden it's normal. And people think bottled water is fresher than out of the tap. In fact, some of the brands fill the bottles out of the tap and sell it as water. But we don't know that. We just go, oh, I'm thirsty, I need a bottle of water. And so that's become normal. And one of the things that I realised a while ago, I was actually in a service station in Auckland, and they put the petrol price up to cover the roading situation. It's great, they're all complaining now. So I went into a service station, there was this young Indian guy serving this woman, and she was not a nice person, I felt, because she was having a go at him about the price of petrol, because she'd just filled her car up. And I stood there. I like to be outspoken sometimes. And so I just observed quietly and listened to her having a go at this poor student. And then she turned around, and I felt at that moment I needed to express something to the young fellow. I didn't want to talk to her. She wasn't nice. And so I looked at this young fellow and I said to him, I feel really sorry for you. I was quite loud because I wanted her to hear me. And I said, I feel really sorry for you. Like, you're getting abused by these people. Did you set the price of the petrol? And he's like, no, but I deal with this all day. And I said to him, well, take heart in this moment as you watch that woman walk out the door, having complained about paying $2.30 a litre for petrol, and she just spent $4.50 on a bottle of water. Our whole thing of normal has changed. We used to go into the supermarket, buy produce. There was no such thing as a plastic wrapped cucumber. Why is it plastic wrapped? Because it might get scratched, and then we won't buy it. And this is where for me, it's all about the consumer. The supermarket has one lettuce left on the shelf. Now, if you went into the supermarket and you looked at that lettuce, who here would buy that lettuce? Let's be honest. Who wouldn't buy that lettuce? Yeah, so you guys don't even want to be honest. You're all sitting there, I know you're all sitting there going, if you needed it, you'd buy it. But the fact is, as soon as we see one lettuce sitting on the shelf, nowadays, like in the old days, you'd be like, sweet, there's a lettuce left. I'm going to get that because I need a lettuce. Now, though, we go in, we look at that one lettuce and we're like, there's no lettuce. And you ask the guy in the supermarket, are there any lettuces? And he's like, no, there's one there. And you're like, no, there's not. And well, there is one. No, there's something wrong with that one. You haven't even looked at it, but because there's only one lettuce there, you assume there's something wrong because nobody else brought it. And so we want choice. We want perfection is what we're looking for. And then we take the takeaway coffee cup, and I love, it was great hearing Dom go through the takeaway coffee cups, because I want to talk about the consumer justification of these products, because that's what's happened is as we've gone through this process, what we've started doing is looking at all these new things, the water bottle, the wrapped cucumber, all those sort of things, and now we justify it. And coffee is one that I see people justify all the time. The number of times you go into a coffee shop and you see people order a takeaway coffee. Now, only probably 50% of them leave and drink the coffee when they leave. Half of them order a takeaway coffee and sit down at the cafe to drink it. Groups of mums are the worst. You go in and there's a group of mums sitting there and they've all got takeaway coffees. And I've asked them, why would you order a coffee in a takeaway cup and then sit here and drink it? The justification from mums is, well, I might have to leave quickly. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a group of mums at a coffee shop, but they ain't leaving quickly. They're going to be there for as long as they can. In fact, they'll get another coffee. And so they'll go through 2 takeaway coffee cups. And I've said to another one, oh, no, well, so why would you use that? Oh, well, just in case the child spills it. And I had this whole group of I love being outspoken sometimes, it's so fun. But I said to them, so just a thought, have you guys ever considered, if you got it in a reusable cup, you could just push it to the middle of the table and the child wouldn't be able to reach it. That's what they used to do in the old days. But exactly. And then, the most frustrating one is people say it keeps the coffee hotter. If you want a really hot coffee, when you order the coffee, ask them to make a super hot coffee in your own cup. Or ask them to heat the cup. Instead of getting a takeaway coffee cup and making the excuse that it keeps the coffee hotter, it's crazy the number of people who use that. But my favourite one recently was the one, and it was in the Herald, where a lady, the company wouldn't give her a takeaway coffee cup, which was great. You're having it here, so you don't need one. And then she's like, oh no, I need one because otherwise it'll smear my lipstick. That's a great justification, isn't it? You could just put on some more lipstick, but no, that would be too hard. We just want to drink out of a tiny hole. Obviously, that's her thing. Her preference is drinking out of a tiny hole. So then I said to the group I was talking to, I was like, look, why don't we just get her a reusable coffee cup with a tiny hole that won't smear her lipstick? You know? Because there's no difference between a reusable takeaway and the tiny hole and a takeaway. But this is where, for me, I've seen a lot of change in the past 10 years, and I've been sucked into a lot of these things as a consumer. One of the things I'm really anti is the one card. I don't like the one card. Considering I'm working with Countdown, it's great. But the one card, we go in and we're like, I get rewarded. We feel excited about being rewarded for buying off a company. And what's happened is there's this massive data collection now. And we don't even know it exists. So even when you go to get a bank loan, they're collecting data on you on all aspects on your life in Facebook, Instagram, through any interaction you have in social media. They collect data. And then we've got the one card. Now we're like, I use my one card and every 3 months I get $15. So you're rewarded, aren't you? It's like, I'll always shop at Countdown. Then one day I was standing at Countdown and I thought, because they keep sending me out these emails, and the emails are like, oh, wow, Kate, Lindt chocolate is on sale. Now, I realised that they knew I like Lindt chocolate, because that's always the thing that they tell me is on sale, because that's what I buy. And so I was standing in there one day, and I thought, I was watching everybody swiping their one card, and I thought, it's interesting as a society where we're often, trying to revolt against our privacy being extracted from certain things. We're trying to bring privacy back in. But then we go to the supermarket, we swipe a one card, and at that moment, in that second, when you swipe it, instantly you're giving out the information about what time you shopped, what you brought, where you shopped, how much you spent. And I had a little bit of a thing. I wanted to have a try, so I haven't got a one card anymore. And I'd read this thing in the States about how this woman purchased a whole lot of baby gear on her father's credit card, and then an insurance company rang up the father to ask him if he wanted to get life insurance for the new baby. Yet the daughter hadn't told her father that she was pregnant. But the company knew this before the father did. And so I wondered about the one card. So I had a little bit of an experiment one day, and I like going in without my one card and using everybody else's. I think it's a great plan. So I go in and I brought all my normal groceries. We've got a cat and 2 dogs. So I brought some cat food, some cat biscuits and stuff. And my mate Cindy was behind me in the line. I was like, oh, mate, left my one card in the car. I don't even have one, but it's fine. Left my one card. Oh, sure, you get the points. Here we go. Swiped her card. Next week, she got some whiskers samples for her new cat. She doesn't have a cat. But they now think she has because I swiped her card when I brought my cat biscuits. And that's where we've got into this really weird marketing phase where we are targeted on many different levels as a consumer, and it's great. We talk about product stewardship and the circular economy, and that's really important because we need the brands to take more responsibility. Unfortunately, the consumer is incredibly influenced, and that comes from many different sectors because we've got the social media, we've got the influencers now, which is the new thing. So you've got people who are given stuff to promote it online so that encourages people to use it. And now we've got into the consumer being quite confused because all this messaging is coming out around recycling. It's something I deal with constantly in councils, as people have heard on the TV that all the plastics are going to landfill. Or, what's the point in recycling anyway because it's all going to landfill. Or they've seen all this negative messaging around reusing that they're like, oh, I might as well just not even recycle because nobody's sorting out the problem. And that's when I looked at, for me as a consumer, what is the situation that we've created? Basically, we've become a very, very timid person who sits at the bottom of this cycle where the manufacturer creates a product, tells us we need it, we buy it off the retailer, then we throw it away. Now, at this point, we give it to the council in several different ways. We give it to them in a rubbish bag, a recycling bin, or we expect a green waste collection or something. And then we've got this big missing piece where there's nothing that goes back to the manufacturer. And where I see it as being wrong is that we've gone, the manufacturer creates the product, the retailer sells it and markets it, the consumer buys it and then goes, it's not my fault. Like, why doesn't the manufacturer make a difference? But in the meantime, that consumer will continue to buy that product and support it constantly, but still complain that the manufacturer hasn't changed. And one of these products that I would identify is things like, flushable wipes, for example. Now, no adults ever needed flushable wipes, did they? Until somebody made them. And then they marketed it to us and said, you need flushable wipes. And there was that ad. There was that woman that stood there and she gave this guy a packet of flushable wipes and sent him to the toilet. I don't even know how that ad came about, and that was weird. The fact that the guy went to the toilet with the flushable wipes was weirder. But then he came back and she stood there. She stood there and she's like, so how do you feel? Now this guy stood there and he's like, I feel awesome. Now at that point I thought, who's going to buy flushable wipes? Like that's a great, here we are. Now, and I was really disturbed. I just wanted to reach out to that guy and say, look, seriously, buddy, if you went to the toilet and you felt like you needed flushable wipes, maybe you could have had a shower or done something differently. But at what point did we ever need that? But we were told we need it. Now what's happened is flushable wipes are a huge issue in our wastewater, in fatbergs, and all these things. And what's happened is we're now paying, the councils are now spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year trying to flush out these fatbergs from all these products that are flushable that aren't. And then the manufacturer is still marketing, we're paying to get rid of it, but they've taken no responsibility. And that's where the consumer steps in and they go, I want regulation. And this for me has been something I've been quite fascinated with, is watching people's movement from, we buy the product, we're waiting for the manufacturer or the council to sort it out. And all the time, we're all sitting around waiting for someone. Now, this someone person hasn't arrived yet. But we're all waiting for someone. And what we want someone to do is we want someone to arrive and we want them to regulate. So someone does. The government sets up this plastic bag ban. They're like, right, as of the 1st of July, no more plastic bags. What happens? The consumer complains. Oh, but what am I going to line my bin with? That's not fair. So then we buy, the bin liner sales go through the roof because now we still need to line our bins and we have to buy plastic bags, so that's even worse. But we wanted somebody to make a difference and then we complained about it. But what I found fascinating about the regulation was when they banned the plastic bags and the supermarkets stopped supplying them, did you notice on the first day there were a lot of angry people leaving the supermarket because they forgot their bags? On the second, at the end of the first week, second time they went to the supermarket, most people were remembering their bags. By the third week, it was normal for everybody to take their own bags. But when they banned it, we were all like, how can you do this to us? It's not convenient. But we proved that we can change our behaviour in 3 weeks and make something normal. So we're always waiting for somebody to change the rules, and then we're waiting for the ultimate solution, and we're waiting for someone to fix it. And what I challenge all my people in my workshops is to stop thinking about someone as being somebody else and start pointing the finger on themselves and looking at themselves as someone who needs to start making better choices. And for me, education has been quite a fascinating journey, learning about myself mostly, but then being able to translate that into people. to start making people realise that we can't sit around waiting for the government to change, because legislation takes a long time. And we've got all of these products that have made so much impact in a very short amount of time. In 10 years, we've created more plastic than the past entire century. So how do we change what we've started and turned into a monster in a short amount of time? We can't be waiting for the manufacturers just to change everything. What we need to start doing is using our power, which we've forgotten. We have a superpower which is in our wallet, your EFTPOS card. The main way we can change companies' behaviour or the way that we create waste is by stopping buying it. The way we can impact companies to make them change the way they do things is not supporting their product. But if you keep buying a bottle of water, you're supporting the movement of bottled water. But our perception is that it's recyclable, so it's okay. But what about if we just didn't have plastic bottles and everybody filled their bottle from a tap? What about if it was normal at a service station to not have a whole lot of soft drinks and water bottles all in single-use plastics and they had a water filter? I mean, I'd be happy to go in and pay 50 cents to fill my own water bottle from a water filter, instead of pay $4.50 for a single-use bottle. And then it's that perception versus reality. In our heads, all of our waste is going to landfill, they're chucking some dirt over it and it's disappearing like magic. But the reality of landfill is that our waste is going into a lined pit that's designed to last 1,000 years. And then eventually it's sealed up and then it just mummifies. And just recently in Hastings, they went into a section of the landfill to put some more pipework in. The section's been closed for 10 years and all the newspapers were like brand new. But we think it's paper, it'll go into the land and it'll break down like magic. And then it's that empowerment. And that's for me the most important thing is people power. And we see it as beginning to happen along many spectrums, like people out there tidying up the beaches, people starting to make more conscious choices. But often the people power is really quite narrow-minded. When we become very green, like when I got a worm farm, all my friends started calling me a greenie. Then I got like a garden, they were like, oh, Kate, you're going all alternative and stuff. And the perception from them was that I was actually becoming, like I was living in an alternative lifestyle because I was starting to grow and, grow things and compost. And I said to one of my girlfriends, like, every household used to have a compost bin. That was normal. A couple of bits of 4x2 in the backyard in the corner by the people your parents didn't like the most. There was always a compost bin and that was normal. And so I actually challenged all my girlfriends who looked at me as this changing person who was becoming abnormal and alternative, and actually challenged them to say, hey, look, actually, I'd like you to think about it this way. Personally, I look at what I'm doing as going back to normal. I'm growing stuff. We've got 35 fruit trees. We've got 3 raised bed veggie gardens. We've got 2 worm farms, a compost bin, a bokashi bin, a dog poo composter, and now we live on 800 square metres. The only fruits I've brought in 3 years is bananas, stone fruit, and strawberries. We're completely seasonally. We've saved a fortune. We have so much food that we can give it to people, our neighbours, and help them out. And kids, we've got feijoa trees out on the verge so the kids can eat them on their way home from school. And we've gone back to normal. And I said to my girlfriends, you guys and your old like disposable coffee cups and single-use drink bottles, you're living alternatively. And that's where we need to change our perception from how we live now in this disposable lifestyle as alternative. No generation has ever had an impact on the planet like we have, and we're all still sitting around waiting for somebody to come up with a solution. And that's where, for me, my powerful message for anybody who comes to any of my workshops, and I do make them listen to me for 2.5 hours. You guys are lucky, this is a short session. But I think a lot of people have that concept of we have to do everything. And often we're sitting there looking at ourselves and we're doing quite well as ourselves. We look at our neighbour who's putting out 5 bags a week and we're like, what's the point of me doing anything if they do nothing? And we get disheartened and we're like, why should I make the effort if my neighbours aren't doing anything? The fact is, if you were doing nothing as well, nothing would be changing. And what we need to do is change the way that we think about waste into every single thing that you do and you reduce waste is something. It's not nothing, it's something. And just imagine, in New Zealand we've got 4.5 million people. Now, tomorrow 4.5 million people could use a single-use piece of plastic, every single one of us. And in general, most of us probably do, in one way, shape or another. And imagine if tomorrow every single New Zealander just reduced one piece of waste, just one, a straw, didn't use plastic wrap on a sandwich, didn't buy muesli bars in a single-use plastic. Imagine if we all just made one effort tomorrow, 4.5 million things would change in one day. But we're all looking at the big solution and not looking at the small things which actually make a difference. And for me, the thing that justified it for me was when I was first a mum and I started using cloth nappies, I committed to using one a day. All my girlfriends looked at me and said, Kate, you're insane. Everybody else is using disposable nappies. You're never going to make a difference. And I said to them, no, I disagree. If I use one cloth nappy a day, that's 365 nappies a year, which is 12 bags of rubbish that don't go to landfill from a tiny amount of work every day. If every baby in New Zealand, there's 145,000 in nappies at any one time, if every single baby had one cloth nappy change every day, 1 million nappies a week wouldn't go to landfill in New Zealand. At the moment, there's 1 million a day go to landfill. So it's all about the perception of it's not all or nothing. If we all do something, something will change. But while we do nothing, nothing will change. And it's the consumer who can force the change. So I'd really like to thank you for having me. So it says thank you for coming. I just reused that slide. But I would encourage you, like we've started a hashtag this year and trying to encourage as many branches of people to use it, do one thing. And for me, it's about everybody celebrating those tiny things that they do. And if we can all be proud of every single small thing, then we actually, I think then we start realising that we're part of the big picture, not an individual feeling like we're not making any difference. So thanks for having me. It's awesome. Have a great day. I'm really sad I missed all the first speakers. Thank you.